Hey, good evening, afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I got somebody kicking in here. Let me turn this off. It's KB5 MIQ Big Boy with a grandkid's cat up here in my lap. We're going to talk about a couple things today. A little 10-meter history and antenna tuners. Some question I had got into about antenna tuners. So let's talk about 10 meters. All right. This is a band I'm all time promoting because it's one of my favorite bands. The 10-meter band was allocated on a worldwide basis by the International Radio Telegraph Conference in Washington, D.C. on October 4th, 1927. Originally was allocated 28 to 30 megahertz. 300 kilohertz segment from 29.7 to 30 was removed by the 1947 International Radio Conference of Atlantic City. All right. In the late 70s, impending ban by the FCC of the sale of older 23-channel equipment that did not meet more stringent restrictions on newer 40-channel units meant that a surplus of 23-channel CB gear was on the market. This was a windfall for amateur radio enthusiasts, allowing fairly inexpensive radios which could easily be modified for use in a 10-meter band. Amateur, American, novice, and tech class licensees were granted CW and single sideband segments in the 10-meter band as of 001 UTC March 21st, 1987, with the elimination of Morse code testing requirements for U.S. amateurs in February of 07. Technician class licensees who have not passed the code test may operate up to 200 watts PEP using CW and single sideband modes in a portion of the 10-meter band. But you all know the CW is 28.0 to 28.3 and 28.3 to 28.5 is the phone portion, and that's where you will find the majority of your contacts on 10 meters. A bunch of other things about it, propagation characteristics. It's real dependent on the sunspot cycle, and we're starting to pick up now with the sunspot cycle, and you can make some good contacts on 10. I've made some real good ones here lately. And at night, we're having more people check in with us. Couple of organizations, 1010 International, and I never heard of this other one, Breeze Shooters ARC. 1010 is real popular. You hear the 1010 contest. It's been organized since the 60s. And one of our listeners, Chris Howell, sent in this little information about 1010. I'm going to read that to you. Lack of activity might cause the FCC to consider reassigning this portion of the radio frequency spectrum to other service. The beginning of 1010 International nets and 1010 numbers. 10 meters have been roaring during the 50s, then came the 60s with its bad cases of doldrums. Lack of good propagation and the resulting lack of interest caused many amateurs to abandon 10 meters for greener pastures. The mass exodus from the band was cause for concern on the part of a lot of 10-meter enthusiasts for fear that this lack of activity might cause the FCC to consider reassigning this portion of the radio frequency spectrum to some other service. Sometime in 1961, Irv Hunter, K6PWO, started talking about forming an amateur radio organization to promote activity and everyday use of the 10-meter band. In March of '62, word got around that a meeting would take place at the San Dimas Canyon Park near Irv's home in Glendora for the purpose of forming such an organization. A picnic lunch was held on Saturday and several hams from that local area attended, and thus the seed was planted for 1010. So that gives you a little history of the 1010 group. I don't have my 1010 number, but I've considered it. I'm not a big contester myself, but anything to keep our bands being used and we don't want to lose the allocation, and I'm all for it. Okay, we're going to talk about a question I got, and I've talked about tuners a good bit in previous videos, but I'm going to touch on them again and see what we can find out here. Read this initial question I got from this guy, and right here it is. Terry Adams sent me this, and I've received a question from a new ham, and I'm not 100% sure of the correct answer, so instead of maybe giving him an incorrect answer, I want to pass it on to you. First of all, I thanked the new ham for the question, told him I'd contact you for the help, and told him you and I would both learn something new. His question: Do I recommend tuning up on AM or RTTY? In other words, use an external tuner to tune your antenna when operating on AM and RTTY. My first thought is yes, because you're still using the antenna to transmit on. Thanks in advance for helping a new operator. Okay. These are the answers I gave him. This is the first initial answer. Hey Terry, thanks for the question. My LDG tuner automatically tunes in AM, so I'm fairly sure even if you are in AM, it's still going to tune in AM. Honestly, I don't have that much experience with tuners. I've never used a manual one. I think it is common practice with a manual tuner to put the rig in AM and tune 3 megahertz off frequency you want to use, tune, and go back to the frequency and mode you want. I've never heard of using RTTY to tune with. I'll ask the round table tonight. And me and Jeff talked about it. Hey, Jeff and I both come to the conclusion that as long as the radio puts out a continuous carrier like AM or CW, the tuner will work. Neither one of us has done RTTY, but I really don't think RTTY puts out a continuous carrier. Even if your operating mode is AM, tuning on AM is the way to go. Hope this helps, and I plan to touch on this in my next video. Well, let's talk a little bit about tuners again. And Jeff brought this up the other night. Now, some of your older rigs that actually had a tune position at a tune switch, and the tuner requires a continuous carrier like AM or CW. Just a CW or AM carrier for the tuner to tune with. Alright? That's all it is. Now, we're going to talk about something else that's probably going to open the experts up here, but I don't care. That's one of them things that I still see people asking about and talking about with a tuner. Now, bear in mind, I'm 63. Jeff just turned 60 last year. He's been a ham since he's a teenager. I've been licensed since 91. Now, neither one of us ever owned a tuner until a few years ago. I bought my first tuner when I bought this 897 back in 07, and Jeff bought a 718 and a tuner after that. We never owned a tuner. We just worked with resident antennas, and if we made antennas, we cut them and tuned them till we got them resident the frequency area we wanted to operate in. There's a lot of guys you'll see, hey, yeah, put a tuner on that. You can hook it up to a chain link fence and use it for an antenna. Well, yeah, I guess you can, but that don't make a chain link fence a good antenna. Now, I've said this before. I got nothing against a tuner. In fact, I got mine back on my radio now using with this 4-man dipole. But all a tuner does is lie to the radio. It does not make an antenna better. All it does is tell your radio, yes, this is a tuned resident antenna, whether the antenna is tuned or not. This makes the radio see a good antenna. It doesn't make the antenna good. Now, in all honesty, I think a tuner would be better off, and I'm just probably gonna get me in trouble saying this, but if you got a big band like 10 meters, there's a lot of spectrum there. And if you build a dipole antenna and say you cut it for 28.4 right in the middle of tech extra portion, the tech voice portion, but you're a general or above and you want to be able to operate the whole band, and it doesn't have full band coverage. Your SWR gets high when you get up to 29.6, 29.5. That's what a tuner's for. Now, long wire antennas seem to be the rage now. That's all everybody talks about is long wire or loop. Not knocking them. Cody's done a little experiment with one, and he's wanting me to get his Ballon later this fall. If he don't have time to finish experimenting with it, me experiment with it. I may do it. I've kind of wanted to. Not knocking anybody's antennas. And certain antennas are designed to be used with a tuner so you have multi-band function out of one antenna. That's fine. That's great. But you need to understand what kind of antennas you're going to use, what your operating frequencies are going to be, so you can get optimum use out of your antenna, your radio, and your tuner. Just putting a tuner on a radio and hooking it up to a fence or a set of bed springs or anything ain't making a good antenna. Yeah, it may tune it, but it's still not going to make it a good antenna. Now, I'm all for antenna experimenting, because I've done that. Jeff's done it. We all got Tim making antennas, Cody making antennas, Adam's making antennas. That's the fun part of the hobby to us, is making the antennas ourselves. And like I said, Jeff and I didn't even own tuners until a few years ago. We've always run our stations on a budget, and we always run resident antennas. But get a tuner, learn the tuner, but I highly recommend this. I always talk about handbooks, but there's an ARRL antenna book. Look how thick that is. That is on nothing but antennas and matching networks and feed lines. That'll tell you everything possible you could want to know about it. The handbook goes pretty deep into it. That goes really deep into it. That's not a new one. I don't know how old that one is, but you find it used in a bookstore. All the principles going to be the same, or order a new one for ARRL. But learn your radio, learn the antennas you're going to operate with, and if you need a tuner, then use one. I recommend auto tuners. The LDG brand tuners are good. I think MFJ auto tuners are good. There's nothing wrong with using a tuner, but just understand what you're trying to use it for and what your antenna is capable of. Because in my opinion, a tuner is not a cure-all for a bad antenna system. You still need a decent, fairly resonant antenna, or if you're running a long wire, there's still formulas to use with those that you need to operate with. And you just need to understand what your antenna is doing along with what your tuner's doing with it, okay? I may have got a little long-winded there with that, but still working on my audio-visual skills. My last video, y'all notice, had a border on top and the bottom of it, and I figured out, because I put that screenshot of MTC in front of the video, for some reason it changed through the editing program through the whole video, so back to everything's going behind the videos now. But I appreciate everything. Everybody's subscribed to the channel, spread the word. Remember MTC up there in Paris, he's got a lot of good used stuff, and I've talked to Richard up at MENA. There's going to be a lot of used stuff hitting his site. He said he had a ton of it up there he's going through. In fact, he's looking for a mic for me up there now. But if you order from Richard and you talk to him on the phone and you saw about it here, tell him you saw it on my video. I'd appreciate it. Thanks again to everybody who subscribed. All the information about the roundtable, MTC, and everything will be at the end of this video. If you got a question or a comment, please. I love comments, questions, constructive criticism, anything you can do to help, let me know. This is KB5MIQ Big Boy 73.